Welcome to the Empire's Edge. This is Matt Sinkovich, your Dungeon Master. Today we're doing story time. This will be an excerpt from a novel that I'm writing titled The Planet Eaters. Let's get started and hear the first few chapters. Chapter 1, Rum Aground Tavern. The sun, hours from casting direct rays on the narrow cobbled streets of the merchant district, raised feeble distinction between walls and doors, barrels and streets. Shark stood in a closed doorway, seeing everything, with the glow of his pipe a deliberate sign of his presence, warning away the unwary and signaling the invited. A form as large as him, wrapped in a mariner's canvas cloak, emerged from the darkness and walked up. "Druga," Shark said. "Shark." "The captain?" Druga asked in Velki Skriatok Goblin. "Not yet, but the others are inside." Shark replied in the same cacophonous language. For a moment, the two Velki Skriatok Goblins filled the doorway, their large bone frames turned sideways until Druga passed within. A man approached Shark. "Wrong door, human." Shark chewed the words into place. The man stopped at Shark's outstretched arm. "Let me through," he said. "Wrong door. You better be careful. These streets are unkind to the inattentive." The man perceived Shark more closely as the weak light rose, taking in the bony ridges on his forehead and cheeks, the protrusion on his chin and the ridges on his nose. "Skriatok," the man said, stepping back, noticing Shark's canvas coat. His hand went to the waist of his own coat, touching something through the fabric. "Yes, Skriatok, and you should consider returning the way you came." The man moved hurriedly yet up the darkened street. "Because you've shown every thief where you keep your silver." The man's footfalls rattled away as a deliberate stride of a familiar gait registered to Shark. "Captain." Captain Telrev, half a head shorter than the crewman, stepped close to Shark and lit a taper from the Skriatok's pipe, then lit his own. The cherry glow illuminated his dark beard, high cheekbones, and gray human eyes as the smoke of his rum-spicy burley tobacco floated into the darkness. "The others, Deckmaster?" "Present and accounted for in the back room, Captain." "Very well. Let us discuss our mischief, Mr. Grun." "Yes, sir," Shark said, as they stepped into the Rum Aground Tavern. Chapter 2, Duke Hanens' Estate. A servant man in tight-fitting black clothes placed a tea tray on the mahogany table adjacent to his master. The scent of the sea mixed with plumera on the open veranda. The Duke, dressed in loose-fitting blue pants and an open, white, billowing shirt, pinched the flame of the candle stub, ignoring the tray and the man. He turned the parchments on the table face down and reclined in his chair, letting his shirt fall open, enjoying the cool morning air on his chest. Teacup and saucer silently came into his hands. Then the servant retreated ghost-like. Reclining as he was, Duke Hanen held the saucer to his sternum, the warm porcelain making a delicious counterpoint to the air. "I'll wear the green suit today." "Of course, Your Grace." "The one with the short coat and slash sleeves?" "Yes, that's the one. Damn his effrontery," the Duke thought. "No, with the silk and gold brocade on the collar and cuffs. I will dress at the 10th hour today, Your Grace." The Duke watched the world grow over the rim of his cup as the light grew and until enough time had passed. He loved seeing his city emerge from the sea and sky. "He's gone." A man, fortified with a purple hurricane cloak, entered the veranda from around the corner. "Seems like a good man." "The best. Couldn't do without him." The Duke sipped his tea without sitting up. "What do you know, Lucas?" "It's happening. They're meeting at the Rum Aground as we speak." Lucas helped himself to tea and egg bread. "Where's that?" "Kirk Avenue," Lucas said while chewing. The Duke frowned. "Kirk Avenue," he said, watching his city brightening in the sunrise. "Amazing how one has no knowledge of a street in one's own city. It's not your best street." "What will Telrev do?" "Oh, he'll go. It has begun, Lucas." The Duke regarded his city with his teacup. "Ella Duane will become the center of the world." "How long, Your Grace?" The Duke turned his head. It will take Telrav 4, maybe 6 weeks to sail the storm tracer there. Another month to wrangle the locals, and a month or so to sail home. Autumn, Lucas. In the autumn, Eladwain will be the city of which I have always dreamed. Yes, Your Grace. But considering the powers you entreat, I hope, come winter, Eladwain still stands. Chapter 3. Rum Aground Hall. Dissonant carps from the floor planks, checked by purposeful boot strides, announced the arrival of Captain Telrav and Shark to the humans and slate-colored villa man waiting with Druga, Captain Telrav's master artillerist, who leaned against the oak mantel of cold stone fireplace, his head nearly touching the ceiling beams. Captain, he said in human, through threatening-looking teeth, it is good to see you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Druga. Telrav gestured to one of the empty bench-like chairs. Mr. Aubryn, the captain said, directing his attention to the narrow-faced gray man as he sat. You are particularly quiet this morning. I have spoken no more, no less than Mr. Stewart, Aubryn announced. Yes, but Mr. Stewart rarely speaks at all, Captain Telrav said. Stewart smiled with his entire face, but tried to hide it by smoothing his beard and mustache. But everyone already smiled with him, though the two Skriatok smiles looked as though they could humble a jungle ape, and Auburn's could chill water. Captain Telrav clapped Stewart on the shoulder, still smiling, saying, Shipmates, we've won the contract. Duke Hanens' representatives accepted my bid. All that remains is to meet with his procurator and sign the contract. Everyone nodded their heads, but Shark shifted his pipe in his mouth. All that remains, he said, but the work will only have begun. Hanen wants the island managed, Telrav said. Managed? Druga asked. Wait, Aubryn said, did I miss something? Which island? The island of Vitno Ostrov, the captain said, raising both eyebrows. Shark made a point not to bite his lip. He leaned in his chair, drawing his hand across his mouth, but really gauged the reaction of the others at the table. They remained fixed on Captain Telrav, awaiting the next piece of information. Good, he thought. No one noticed the captain's tell, or me looking to see what they've seen. Telrav proceeded. He purchased it for the resources, but he assumed that Vitno Ostrov, like all the islands in the Mikovri archipelago, are inhabited. He wants to deal with as few local leaders as possible, if that's the case. One would be best, so managed. Druga, Stewart, and Aubryn nodded their heads as Telrav set up lists of orders for the ship, each man knowing his job, provisioning, preparing. But Shark traveled leagues away while the captain spoke. Vitno Ostrov. Finally, he thought. Shark had more to do than prepare the ship, and that would be substantial, but he needed information. So he watched the captain's hands and mouth. The captain is not telling us everything. Not that I expected him to, but there is something in his manner. He hides the information that would kill us instead of alerting us. Shark met the captain's eyes as he heard himself addressed. You'll need to have the deckhands prepare the ship for a voyage into tropical waters. Yes, Captain. We'll depart on the evening tide in 4 days. That's not much time, gentlemen, but you know I've summoned you for a different reason. There is something about this island that Hanem is not telling. Shark perked up. I don't know what it is, but I get the impression from his representative that he aims to go beyond lumber and tin. Telrav shook his head. What do you suspect, Captain? Shark asked in level tones. Telrav thought for a moment before saying, he wants power, no small surprise. But there's an impatience to him, much more than the year or two it will take to begin harvesting resources. Shark imagined Telrav about to say, I suspect he... But instead the captain stopped, held Shark with his eyes and smiled. Captain's prerogative, Mr. Grun. I'll keep my suspicions to myself until a time when it's necessary to share them with the crew. But you know this, men. You 4 are my wranglers. You will bring this island to heel. You will do what you always do as my eyes and ears, learn the ways of this island, while the rest of the crew mans the ship and determines how best to deliver Vitno Ostrov into my hands, so that I may deliver it into the hands of the Duke. Then the Duke will make us rich. They all nodded, But Shark couldn't help thinking that this would be the first time they'd done this kind of work on a primitive island, and wondered how well they'd do in a jungle. And the captain had not yet addressed the squall brewing in the room. There should be 5 of us. Who will replace Constance as the ship's lightning? Steward, the captain said, scout out some breakfast and bring it here. Shark kept his frown to himself. Chapter 4. Telltales' Fortune. Overlapping conversations wove invisible threads through the air of the merchant market as hands exchanged goods for goods and goods for currency, while a permanent orange dust hung knee-high in the air as feet, booted and bare and sandaled, shuffled on the sun-baked clay. Shark searched for Telltale. The Storm Tracer's deckmaster made his way through the fish market and skirted the handful of mongers, who positioned their carts at oblique angles to the stalls. He followed more open routes through dried fruit stalls, pausing periodically to stand tall and look for the story man. Rounding the corner near the rows of tightly woven baskets filled with unground spices, Shark saw guards at their typical locations. He paused to watch the underpaid men lean against walls and sit on burlap sacks. Merchant guards, he thought. Few people paid the Skriatok any attention. So common had his race become in Eladwain that the observant would have remembered seeing him. Shark made note of who they might be and pressed on. An untuned din, like flat wind chimes, grew as the Velki Skriatok neared the market corner, where the city wall met the palace bailey. Tinsmiths wielding punch, pliers, and snippers under great hooded awnings at benches and beehive furnaces focused on their individual pots, oblivious to the army of tinkers shifting and moving around them out of time, to Shark like a giant mechanical centipede. Shark paused at a bench long enough to ask, "Telltale?" The man suddenly shook his head and resumed tapping with an angled hammer and seaming spoon. The sailors stopped, and where the last bench abutted the wall at the archway leading to Iron Street. "Jarrow!" A gray and black-haired man looked up from his work. "Sharky, when do you ship out?" 4 days. "Have you seen Telltale?" "Amber merchants are in from the Polvoy coast." "Oh, big marks?" "There are big marks there." Shark patted the man's arm. "Thanks, Jarrow," before moving along the length of the road. Within minutes, he passed craftsmen and merchant dealing in iron and steel. Cutting through merchant alleys, he saw his parents moving nail kegs. They didn't notice him, so he kept moving. "We'll catch up later," he thought. His trek finally took him to the huddled brick buildings of the silversmiths and jewelers. There, he saw Telltale, surrounded by men in greens, blues, and tans, wool clothes of men from remote Polvoy, a contrast to Telltale's simple, layered gray robes. He watched Telltale make money, but didn't interrupt. The old man was having a good day. Amber merchants came to Eladwain on random and rare occasions, the security arising from their lack of schedule, only donning their traditional clothes when they arrived in the city. Telltale knew, though. There was 30 of them in Shark's field of view. 7 listened undividedly to the story. He counted 8 or 9 that circled, listening, and circled out. A full half of them busied themselves examining wares or holding up walls. They're better than guards, those 15, Shark thought. He sat comfortably against a wall, listening to Telltale, making no move on the story man, not wanting to come between those 15 and their entertainment, despite his need and the limited time. Not even if Druga were here, he thought, figuring those brightly clothed, smiling men could deal with 2 Velki Skriatok without kicking up dust. Shark sensed it and knew why, but wondered if they could sense it emerging in him. The word was given. The group broke up, and with promises for more stories after the midday meal, Telltale nodded, bowing and smiling, seemed to shake hands with them while he adjusted the multiple layers of his garment, as though assuring protection from the sun. But Shark watched the wrinkles at the corner of Telltale's eyes and the set of his nostrils, the lightness of the Polvoy's hands. They pay him in amber. The deckmaster made a mental note of, as close as he could tell, the location where the sand gems were deftly tucked. With the courtyard nearly emptied, Telltale's darting brown eyes met Shark's green, then counted the egresses. But he set his shoulders at a steep angle and made a gesture of greeting, hands spread but wrists close together, that Shark interpreted as defensive. Sharkath Karine, my friend, the storyteller said, circling to the right. I rarely see you outside of the main market, and nails, of course. I came to find you. On this day? Telltale paused. My time is full. You are doing well today. Telltale backed up toward the alleyway, pointed an accusatory finger. Now you wait. Important people are expecting me later. They're sure to have seen you. You're hard to miss. You misunderstand me, Telltale. And when have you heard of me robbing or killing someone? That's my very thought. I have no story on you. No one has a story on you, apart from that you crew for Telrav on the Storm Tracer. But everyone gives you room. Shark took a step nearer. And your parents sell nails. It is the very lack of hearing anything that makes me afraid. You misunderstand, Shark said, holding up empty, large hands. I came to pay for a story. The man's jaw remained set, his stance resolute. A story. A story. You threaten me, and you want a story. Telltale, I am only a threat in your mind. I'm shipping out, and I need help. You're not a threat. Shark shrugged. What are you willing to pay, Sailor Skriatok? Neither of which sounds like it produces much coin. I am able to pay for your best story. My best? What do you know of my best, or what it's worth? I've watched you, Telltale. When times are tough, you throw stories away to crowds, calculating by their number how many coppers it will bring. But all those stories are variations on a theme, embellished with details lifted from those listening most likely to have money. But you also have copper stories for little groups. They're your bread and butter, more unique than the crowd stories and worth hearing again and again. Reliable money. Yet you also have silver stories, rare narratives containing a piece of information or subtle wisdom. Those are a new cloak, a knife, or a whore. Shark smiled and raised a knowing finger as proof of his assertions, as Telltale's jaw relaxed, listening to the story of himself. But you have gold stories too. Those are individual, told to a crowd of one, where you spend as much time looking over your shoulder as you do to your audience. They're dangerous moments of time, history lessons geared for domination, revenge, or crime, and you have hundreds of them, maybe thousands. You tell them potentially once, ever, because telling them a second time could constitute a betrayal, and your life would be over. But those stories, Telltale, are what you're really about. They make the other stories a side job by comparison. I need a gold story. The list in Telltale's shoulders righted, and his aspect softened. He smiled from his eyes for the first time and shook his head. Shark, I'm mollified and frightened all the more. How long have you seen through me? 12 years ago, when my parents moved us here, I could see that there was more to you than the stories you told. You were just a boy, or whatever a Skriatok calls it. I see things clearly when I want to. Telltale considered that with a nod. Well, even a gold story won't tempt me today. What do your powers of perception tell you about that? That the polvoy are a windfall, Shark said, unlooked-for money that places you ahead, way ahead, turning your best silver stories into 100 gold or more, perhaps a small villa down the coast if you catch their attention enough that they remember you next year. Today is almost a life changer. Almost? Shark, you were very close, right up until the last part. I'm very close. When they come back tonight to pay me, that's all I'll need. I step into a new life and write my own story. Shark held up one gold eagle, but Telltale shook his head. You don't realize what you're turning down, human. 1 gold, Skriatok? Telltale smiled. I offer you as much as you hope to gain from them, plus 1 gold eagle. You don't have that kind of coin, and even if you did, 1 eagle is not much of a down payment. Again, you misunderstand, Shark said. I pay for one story, and you're able to be paid by the Polvoy tonight. Telltale lost his smile. So you are a threat. Shark shrugged. Chapter 5. Storm Tracer's Secret. Victor Telrav made his way below and aft to his windowless cabin. The door locked, he paused, palms resting flat on the worn door frame, feeling the subtle wave action as he and his universe bobbed in a darkness that smelled of lamp oil, oak planks, and whiskey. Selecting a key from a chain around his neck, he unlocked and opened the door to the treasure niche. The captain felt for the tin that held tapers and matches. Striking one to life, he lit a lamp, and the figure in the niche noticed him. Telrav backed away as the image he watched seemed to draw closer. Reaching his hands above his head, he braced himself against his favorite beam, a round protrusion, a burl the size of a mango fruit, left unsquared by the shipwrights afforded him purchase. Sweat beaded on his face, and the image in the niche absorbed the details of his actions. I have the contract, he said to the niche. We are headed for the island of Vitno Ostrov. The flame held steady on the lamp, and the ship gently rose over a swell. Don't be afraid, Telrav said. Nothing in the cabin moved. How can he possibly harm you? The captain asked. The stillness in the room weighted the darkness in the corners. He won't touch you, and it's different this time. Telrav stopped as though cut off. It will work, because this time I know what Brone wants. He waited again. The image moved in agitation at the name. That doesn't matter now, because I have Shark. The cabin waited in quiet, and I know what Shark really is. Telrav watched the image's movements. No, I can't force him to find her. That has to happen. No, that has to happen by itself or she'll suspect. Telrav took one last look at the image and relocked the niche. He pulled a cork from a bottle of whiskey and poured some in a stone bowl lashed to a table. There, the offering is made. He lit his pipe, regarding the closed niche door before replacing the bottle and blowing out the lamp. Sinking to his bunk, he listened to the muffled sounds of his crew preparing the ship while he checked his charts in his mind, imagining the storm tracer sailing the surface of the blue paper. And all that you have to do is get me there. Chapter 6. Telltale's Truth. Telltale worked Shark's gold coin between finger and thumb at the base of his slightly turned down chin, as though he breathed invisible gold dust for inspiration. Shark watched him, noting his subtleties of breathing, posture, and expression, each moment expecting the human to begin, only to release his own tell of minute expression, parted lips, a half blink, a small breath, the exhale communicating his veiled patience. He's reading me as much as I'm reading him, Shark thought. The man and Skriatok stood in the dusty shade of a building's courtyard, never closer than 2 arm lengths, never farther than 3. Like me. Shark applied all of the powers his mother, his real mother, taught him when using the look to learn about something. The wrinkles around the eyes, the mouth, the nostrils told the most. But this man is practiced at being guarded. His skin says nothing I haven't already learned. Experience drew Shark's attention to the eyelid crease in Telltale's left eye. The man's eye grew in the Skriatok's perception. Shark imagined, as he always did, that he was an insect flying close to the point of his scrutiny, while the cluster of eyes of a fly grasping more. A hair in Telltale's eye crease stirred. He shifted focus to the man's other eye and saw the same stirring. He nodded mentally, not wanting to give his perceptions away. He gauges my motives even as I plumb his. I'll end this. Shark let fall the mental defenses that concealed his attentions. Telltale's reactions registered as a gasp and laughter, though his face didn't move. I believe you, Shark, and it is wise to keep this talent a secret. I know a few who know it, let alone practice it, Shark said. There are more of us than you would believe. And in the north, beyond the Corman Empire, along the Maelsmorn Sea, people say it's their religion. They fight great battles over who may use it. Shark frowned. Telltale leaned to within an arm's length. What else can you do? Shark regrouped his mental defenses. The story. Yes. Of course, the story. Well, you're right. I know something of Vitno Ostrov, but not as an island. It was a city on the island of Makovri. It is in the Makovri archipelago, Shark said. Yes, Shark. Imagine a time when the entire archipelago was a single island. Shark looked toward the ocean that he couldn't see. The Makovri archipelago stretches more than 1,000 leagues. All one island. Well, you see, a warrior lived there, a knight, a champion of justice fighting a foe. Ducevny Pijak. I don't know that name, Shark said. Birdmen with claws for hands in a language that rippled with magic. Keep going. The Ducevny Pijak became too powerful in treating. Wait, powerful how? In numbers or in magic? Who knows? Maybe both. But they opened a door to another realm and brought beings of power like themselves, but greater, who pressed the knight back. The knight have magic too? Shark, know this. All beings who achieve power, greatness, wield magic, though they may neither know it nor admit it. Yes, he wielded magic like a lance, but was driven back even so. Their battles were cataclysmic, reducing Makovri to desert, punctuated by oases supporting the living. The knight, seeking to increase his power, touched upon a thread of magic that led to a source which could enable him to destroy the Ducevny Pijak and drive those powers back through the door from which they came. But he didn't anticipate that the power he touched would make him part Ducevny Pijak. He himself became a drinker of souls like his enemy. What does that mean? Unknown. Only that whatever it was the Ducevny Pijak did, it wasn't simply killing. It wasn't drinking their blood or eating their brains, but it seems as though they drew the power, energy, what's in us, he tapped his chest, out of them to enhance themselves. Shark frowned and leaned back. I argue that we lack the words to express what they did without making it sound like a children's story. But the evidence, Telltale lowered his voice and leaned in, is in you. His voice became the faintest of gasps. And me. The power we use to see people is likely the same power the Ducevny Pijak fed upon. We would have been their victims, as weak as we are. He leaned back. What was the knight's name? I'm certain that it was as complicated and protracted as a Corman noble, but the name that survives is Brone. Brone? Telltale nodded knowingly. There was a time, thousands of years ago potentially, that name was spoken like a curse. Brone, so quit saying it. Now, here's the part you need. It's believed that Brone yet dwells on Vitno Ostrov, not sleeping like a curse, laying low for a time to emerge, but active, like a king, a monarch of jungles and ruins, hating himself for what he became and hating the powers that forced him to his current state, for they, too, those powers, still dwell on the island. I don't know how, but the island has become a prison to them. Somehow, they're bound to that place. Who or what could do that? Frightening thought, isn't it? Is it known what motivated Brone to his moral standard in the first place? What else but the love of a woman? What was her fate? Unknown. Perhaps she died in the cataclysm that reduced the island to an archipelago. Perhaps she fled his presence when he became Ducevny Pijak and died elsewhere. All that is certain is that she is dead. Her name? Telltale shook his head. What else? A storm arises when ships approach the island. Not impenetrable, but dangerous. It is unnatural, so the sailors' stories go. Perhaps from Brone himself, or one of the two powers trapped there. Perhaps from something else. The only other dwellers on the island are goblins. Velki Skriatok? Sharky heard his own surprise in his voice. No, Kratki Skriatok, small goblins. Shark rubbed his chin to cover the tell he felt. It is believed that they were the servants of the Ducevny Pijak, Telltale said. What about those two powerful beings that the Ducevny Pijak brought through the door? I said that they're trapped there too. I mean, what do they do? Do they still war with Brone? Has a truce been declared? Why can't they leave through the door? Perhaps you can ask them. Any more? In the intervening millennia, a race of beings known as the Toata lived there, reptilian giants. Where did they come from? Nowhere known. Perhaps the same place as the powers. They're extinct now, but could have been pawns, fashioned or summoned by one foe, destroyed by another. Any good news about this island? I don't know if it's good news, but there's this. Islanders say the chant, Brone, Katha, Noor, to protect themselves and ward off Brone. Wonderful. Does it work? The man shrugged like Shark. No, Telltale, that is not good news. Then I suppose you won't like hot and muggy. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed these opening chapters of The Planet Eaters. This story takes place on our same gaming world, Yorden, as the Empire's Edge Brimroar Hills, but on the far southern side of the continent. Look for more stories at mattsinkovich.com. Shout out to Nick the Welder, who, when told about the Empire's Edge, said he was already a listener. Thanks a lot, Nick.